What is going on, everyone? We got a story earlier today from Mr. Lance Zierlein on ESPN 97.5 Houston. He said that offensive coordinator Bobby Slowik and quarterback CJ Stroud got into an altercation 2 years ago during the draft process when the Houston Texans were having their meeting with CJ. We have the clip right here. We're going to react to it after. My name is Ruben Calvillo, and this is the 713 Houston Sportcast. This episode is brought to you and powered by BetUS. They're giving you a 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit up to $2,000. On your second and third deposit, it's 125% bonus. Promo code YouTube150 gets that for you guys. Quick 24-hour payouts, 24-hour customer service. BetUS, where the game begins. Now let's check out what this altercation was all about. Once again, this is from John and Lance on ESPN's 97.5. I'm sorry, Houston.
The whole thing now that Slowik's gone. C.J. Stroud came to visit the Texans, and Bobby Slowik was telling them, okay, they were watching stuff on tape. Now, before I tell you this, when C.J. was at Ohio State, he really didn't talk to the OC at all. He didn't think he knew ball. This coming from somebody who knows C.J. intimately. He didn't think the offense coordinator was very smart. So he would only talk to Ryan Day. Ryan Day was the guy who had to communicate with C.J., which I didn't love that, honestly, before the draft process. And it played into some of my thoughts on C.J. in terms of coachability. What I heard was that he didn't, like, his communication was Ryan Day and not the offense coordinator. Okay, well, that's a little strange, but whatever. He comes into Houston. Bobby Slowik is trying to tell him some stuff, and C.J. just says, oh, yeah, I know that we call this, whatever, XY switch, whatever it would be at Ohio State. And apparently, maybe it happened a couple times, and Bobby Slowik just kind of jumped him, said, I don't give a what you call Ohio State. That's college. This is pro football. And Bobby kind of got in his face about it, And CJ's not one to back down at all. And CJ, and I don't know if Bobby was testing him or I don't know what the deal was, but CJ jumped up and got back in his face. And it was very contentious. It had to be kind of broken up. And so when CJ went to his next draft meeting, and I talked to the team where CJ went, because I asked this team, hey, did you hear anything about this with CJ Stroud? And they said, oh, we asked CJ how his last visit went, which was Houston. And he said, terrible. I don't think I'll be going there. And people who train, like CJ's whole crew did not want him to go to Houston. And they didn't think he was going to Houston because it was he and Bobby got into it. And then CJ was drafted by Houston, which that's one of the reasons I was really surprised. Like I kind of wrote, after finding that out, I wrote CJ off from the Texans. And I thought, okay, this is Will Anderson for sure. And so when they traded for him, I was very surprised because I knew there was that lingering stuff there. But then in discussing all of it last year, I heard it was squashed. Like there was no issue. Bobby and him were good.
Okay, so couple things by Mr. Lance Zierlein. One of them, CJ Stroud, if you don't know ball, he's not going to talk to you. The second one, and we'll hit the second one first, the altercation between Bobby Slowik and CJ Stroud. First of all, let's go back 2 years ago. Let's look at where the Houston Texans were. Looking for CJ Stroud. They were looking at the number 2 overall pick in the draft. And the way people felt about the Houston Texans, where, they were on a slippery slope. They were on the verge of, becoming a dysfunctional franchise. DeMeco Ryans was the first step. Now we needed to find out who the quarterback was going to be. Now, I'm not saying Mr. Lance Zierlein is wrong, but I do have some questions that I would ask. One of the things that doesn't make sense is we would have heard about this situation if it indeed happened. We would have heard about a first-time offensive coordinator getting into it with someone who is potentially going to be his quarterback next season. The Texans would have got roasted for it. The team that CJ met with next and said the meeting went terrible. Don't you think the team would have leaked that out there? That CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans meetings didn't go so well that it ended in a physical altercation that had to get separated? Because when Lance Zierlein says that Bobby Slowik gets up and CJ gets up, and someone has to separate them. What does that tell me? Tell me tensions are high. These guys are probably yelling at each other. Guys, we would have heard about this. Unless the Houston Texans are so good at keeping things in house, we would have heard about this situation. I mean, hell, we were even talking about at that time general manager Nick Caserio potentially leaving the Houston Texans after the draft. It doesn't sound like Bobby Slowik. It doesn't sound like CJ Stroud. Now then there's the point that our guy Barrett brought up in the group chat, like what if Bobby Slowik was testing CJ Stroud? What if he wanted to see whether or not he was indeed, soft like some of the, people pre-draft has said about CJ? My response to that is why? Why do it in a way that gets CJ Stroud so aroused he gets up in your face and you guys have to be separated? That's where it doesn't make sense to me. Then to find out that just a year later the beef was squashed, why even come out with the story? But if this is indeed true, what CJ Stroud and Bobby Slowik did in 2 years was pretty damn impressive then. Back-to-back 10-win seasons, back-to-back division championships, back-to-back dominant offense performances in the first round of the playoffs. And these guys hated each other. Wow. Hats off to them. Once again, I don't know whether or not this story is true or not, but I do have some questions. I definitely think if we found out about that altercation, everyone would have known maybe a couple of hours right after. The first part that was brought up, if you do not know ball, CJ Stroud doesn't talk to you, right? Kind of telling you about, which is where Lance brought up, had some concerns whether or not CJ was coachable or not. We've heard D'Amico Ryan say what makes CJ Stroud so great is how coachable he is. And when he makes a mistake, he doesn't make it again. I don't know. I feel like this story was kind of a waste of time. It's funny to think that Bobby Slowik got into CJ Stroud's face. Bobby, without a fade, was looking for a fade. It just doesn't sound like CJ Stroud to lose his character like that and immediately jump into Bobby's face. Let me know your thoughts down below. How do you feel about this altercation that Mr. Lance Zierlein talked about today? For more Houston Texans content, you guys know what to do. Feel free to follow me for more. Go Houston. You guys have a very blessed day. Episode is brought to you and powered by BetUS.